name is Sammy and I am the marketing manager here with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. KDA and K-State Research and Extension are excited you have joined us again. Today we have food safety regulations and Kansas Value Added Foods Lab. Also, I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping items with you again. Sorry, I know most of you know by now how to work Zoom, but I just want to make sure your microphones are muted so we don't interrupt anybody. If you have questions during the presentation, please submit your questions using the chat box at the bottom of the screen. Submitted questions and comments will be monitored by the Kansas Department of Agriculture and K-State Research and Extension. The webinars are being recorded and will be posted online at the end of our session as well. I'm going to turn it over to Londa to go over our poll again. Londa?
Great. Yes, thanks. And thanks everybody for joining again. Glad you could all make it. I don't know if I said it in this meeting or a different meeting. I was talking about how the weather's been good this year. And last year we had some issues with the weather, but this year I'm home in my basement because my kids are home from school today. So anyway, hopefully all of you are safe and warm and everything wherever you are today. And I do want to, before we get going to the poll, why don't I put up the poll and then I'll talk about scale testing while you guys are filling out the poll. So those of you that have been here all week, and you'll know that we have been doing a poll. Is it launched? Can you see the poll? You can see it? Okay, good, because it's showing up different on my screen today than it has been otherwise. So if you fill out the poll, you will get entered into a drawing for a From the Land of Kansas member product. So we've just been drawing from one of the people that fills out the poll, and then you can get crates. Yeah, I forgot to add meat. Sorry about that. So you can fill out the poll, then we can get a good sense of who's here. It's helpful for the presenters, and it's kind of helpful, I think, for everybody on the call to know what else people are selling. Since we don't get to meet in person, we can still kind of know who else is here, even though we're just joining remotely. So while you guys are filling out the poll, I'll mention and thanks to those of you that are putting stuff in the chat too, we appreciate that. So while we're filling out the poll, we'll talk about the scale testing. So we have, so this year we're doing it a little bit differently with scale testing. So if you are in the Olathe area or Olathe area or Parsons area, there are definitely set dates for those. We have K-State Extension is also doing some meat marketing workshops this year. And so in conjunction with those, we're doing scale testing. So the one in Olathe is on February 24. So if you're in the Olathe area, you can go to on February 24, you can go there to get your scale tested. I'm at K-State Olathe. And then on March 3rd is in Parsons. And that's also in conjunction with our meat marketing workshop. And that's at the Southeast Extension Center in Parsons. And I don't remember the address off the top of my head, but so that's in Parsons. So let me see. And then we will also have additional locations in addition to that. So in addition to Olathe and Parsons, we'll be contacting you because we're waiting to see where all the scales are. So when you registered, you could write down, you could indicate how many scales you had to be tested and where you're located. And then based on that, we're trying to figure out where some good locations will be. And then we're working with the KDA weights and measures group to figure out where is the right place to have it. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and I'm going to share the results so you can see who's here. And you can see the poll, Adam? Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Because like I said, it's showing up different on my screen today. So we have lots of people selling fresh whole produce, which is great. Again, I talked about that before. It's great for many reasons. So 81% of you are selling fresh whole produce. 59% of you are selling eggs. So we're definitely going to cover eggs today. So Adam is here and ready to talk about eggs. And then next in line, we have baked goods, 39%, honey, 39%, lots of honey producers and baked goods producers, which is great. Value added, other prepared foods, canned foods. So, and then some foods ready to eat at the market. And then of course, lots of other have gone in the chat too. So again, we're glad to have you all here. Glad for the large variety of products that are being sold. Adam, I'm not sure if this is your screen that's being shared or somebody else's. Is that yours, Adam?
No, that's John Brian Mann's screen. I'm not sure how that is. I
Okay.
tried to share. I can't share while that's being done. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if that'd be relevant. Londa, yeah, if you could do that, and then I'll.
Okay, let's see if I can figure out how to unshare that. I don't know how to unshare. Well, I'll share my screen and then that will, here, I'll just share a different screen and that will cause that one to stop. And then, okay, now I'll stop sharing.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. Things happen sometimes.
I will try to get that off somehow.
Okay, now Adam's able to share. I think I was able to get it off. So, okay, great. Adam, you are up. Thank you so much for joining, Adam. Adam will introduce himself more, but he's with our food safety and lodging program and has always been a great supporter of our farmers market workshops and has traveled around the state with us in the past to do this in person and doing them online now. So thanks so much, Adam.
Thanks, Londa. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today. It's exciting to see all the various types of products that folks are selling, and hopefully we'll get some good information. If you've seen one of my presentations before, hopefully it'll be a good refresher, not just completely boring, but we'll see how that goes. So today we're going to talk about why we have these requirements, our compliance approach, which agency or which program do you need to interact with, depending on type of product. 85% of the products are regulated by FDA and our program here in the state. And then some of the meat and poultry products, depending on where they're sold, have some different agencies to interact with. Talk a little bit about licenses and exemptions, egg sales, which it looks like is going to be a popular topic, and then produce, which is also a popular topic. We'll touch on those. So hopefully there's something for everybody, and you'll at least learn something from the others. I always like to start with why we have these food safety requirements. So they're the latest estimates. They're a little bit old now. They've been delayed on the updates, but we could typically expect 1 in 6 Americans, or 48 million cases a year, to have a foodborne illness, and the cost of the economy and lost wages, medical visits, those kinds of things as well, including lawsuits. So those are the numbers. The stories behind the numbers are actual people, so it's always important to keep this in mind. This is why we're trying to keep food safe and to keep our products safe. So different folks with different exposures and just very tragic outcomes, all too many of these stories to share. So we all want to work to prevent these types of stories from happening. And then we are at the 30th anniversary of the Jack in the Box outbreak, and Lauren Beth's story here shared by her mother, just very terrible. And of course, this is the worst possible outcome from foodborne illness, but it is a possibility, and that's what we're trying to prevent. Depends on the type of food that you do. It's not necessarily, we've always done it this way, so it's fine. But if you just aren't vigilant or you just don't know about a certain process, it can be dangerous. So here's an example from 2015 of botulism from home canned potatoes that were then put into potato salads shared by community function and had another tragic outcome. So that's why we have these food safety requirements. We don't believe that there's only a couple people I've dealt with in my career that actually intended to hurt people. So really the question is, how do we work together to continue to support business success by having safe products? So I'd like to refresh on KDA's purpose: serve, promote, and grow the state's largest industry of agriculture. And so how we do that is very important. And our compliance approach is to educate, warn, and enforce. We want to make sure everyone has the information that they need, the knowledge, and has our help in any challenges that they might face with their particular product so that they can be successful. And that involves a lot of conversations back and forth. So we want to look at systems, help people develop their systems, and just talk through any challenges that we might come up with and celebrate each other's successes. So here's a quote that is pretty famous in the, well, I said it, I think it's famous, I like it. but fair and simple rarely meet. And what that means is that the more we try to make things fair, the more complexity we tend to add. So we can make things that are very simple, they tend to be unfair. So we're striving to make that better. So a lot of times we'll hear feedback of why is this so complicated? And it's really because we're trying to find that right amount, that Goldilocks amount of complexity, so for fairness sake. So a lot of different products out there, and you just see that from the chat and from the poll, how many different types of products, and a lot of those have different types of little nuances on their safety profile, their risk profile that we need to work through, and trying to account for all those in a regulatory scheme does add a lot of complexity. So appreciate everyone working through that with us. Take a quick pop quiz here, and it's a little challenging in the remote setting, but we'll go through these. So I like to say, what is just a pretty common example of a product, and see what folks understand about the risk profile of that product. So I ask, what part of potato salad, what do you put into potato salad that actually requires temperature control for safety? Why do you keep it cold? Not as much of a challenge today, not really picnic season, but as we come back into the spring and summer, I'm sure there'll be some picnics with potato salad. And pretty much everyone understands that you need to keep that refrigerated, but few people really stop to think about why that is. So we ask about eggs. Yeah, eggs definitely require temperature control for safety. So that's why we refrigerate. That's one of the reasons. Celery is a maybe. I say if you're maybe a little bit different path and you heat treat that celery before you put it into your potato salad, then that would require temperature control for safety, but otherwise it wouldn't if it was just raw, unheat treated celery that's chopped up and put in there. Potatoes is going to be a yes. Once you heat treat that starch, great growth medium for bacteria. So definitely a reason for that. And finally, mayonnaise. And what I really miss in person is seeing everybody's face when I put up the no here. That's because of the acidity of that product. It might be contaminated, could make someone sick, but refrigerating that mayonnaise is not going to change that. So a little bit of food science there comes into play and goes against kind of common understanding of a particular product. Now, pop quiz 2, say, why do I have to worry about food safety requirements? My product's really safe. Well, if you look at this list, which one would you think has not been associated with a multi-state outbreak of E. coli? So this is a bacteria that can cause kidney failure and death, cause very serious outcomes. And if we go through this, mayonnaise is in fact the only one. Yes, Alan got that from the quiz. So unfortunately, we've had a lot of outbreaks across the country with these different types of products. And in fact, the CDC recommends that if you're handling raw wheat flour, that you wash your hands before doing anything else like eating, chewing gum. So there's a known risk there as well. But unfortunately, that's the state of things. And so we need to do what we can, take our due diligence to try to provide safe food. Now, I talked about that complexity and who regulates what, and there's some divisions at the federal level that drive a lot of what we do. And then just over the years, programs have been put into different locations, been given different responsibilities to certain types of products. So this is actually the simplified flow chart. We talk about if you're looking through your product, which agency or program are you going to deal with? And that's going to cover most of your bases. The good news is if you just get the wrong one, or if you just call up and say, hey, I don't really want to mess with that flow chart, just call up anybody here at KDA and we'll get you connected with the right program. So one of the questions that we ask is when is a license required? When's a food safety license required? And the general overview is when a product requires temperature control for safety or specialized processing. So the end product may not require temperature control for safety, but getting it to that point requires some specialized knowledge and processing. If you're doing any type of wholesale or business to business types of sales, those require a license. And that would be examples of selling to other businesses like grocery stores, convenience stores, specialty stores, and bakeries. One exemption that comes up a lot in the farmers market and other direct-to-consumer types of operations is a sampling exemption. So I do have put these QR codes in there, and if y'all want to give it a try, we're sort of on, it's not the newest thing around, but it's a little bit easier to put these into presentations. We'll also get you these links after the presentation for sure. We want to put them all in one place, but if you wanted to go ahead and use your smartphone and scan those and see if they work in this format, that'd be great. But sampling, is a small amount of food that you give to the customer without a charge. And it's not like you can buy this plate and I'll give you the steak for free. So it's got to be a small quantity and given free of charge. You still have to provide safe food. And I'll say that a lot today is you have to provide safe food, even if you don't have to have a license. Of course, we all want to provide safe food and you need to understand your product and what's needed to make sure that that product is safe for your customer. There's also a 6-day exemption, and a lot of folks, particularly at farmers markets, may take advantage of that exemption and do a little bit extra at their booth, maybe do a hot dog grill or a hamburger grill to help bring business to their booth. But you can't do meat processing under that 6-day exemption for wholesale, can't do other business-to-business sales under that exemption, but you can do cookout or something like that for your customers. And you can charge for that. You can do that up to 6 times a year. And anything else that you have questions, if we don't get time to answer them today, please reach out. We'll get our contact information up there for you as well. Fundraising exemptions, another one, and this one does not have a limit on number of days. This tends to be used a lot with youth activities. 4-H would be a good example of that. So there's no limit on the number of days, but again, still have to have safe food. This doesn't include meat processing, and for wholesale activities, it would be a little bit tricky to try to squeeze into this exemption. But if you have a question about that, we can sure talk through it. All right, apparently I had a few animations in there, didn't realize that. Another one that was mentioned on the poll, looks like a few folks here. We have a honey exemption that some people can take advantage of. Now, this is kind of narrow in this exemption. Basically says if you want to do wholesale sales, so sell to another business, another establishment, food establishment or food processing plant, and you're not doing anything as the producer except for extracting from the comb with rough filtration, you're not required to have a license. Then the other exemption would be another of that direct to consumer type of exemption where you're packaging that in the retail package and selling that yourself directly to the end consumer. Consignment sales or sales to grocery stores or other store outlets would require a food processing license. So if you're doing that final retail packaging and giving that to another entity to sell, that would require a license. Go ahead and take this question real quick. Any type of consignment sale is really considered a wholesale transaction that does require a food processing license for that processor. And the reason is that those exemptions are based on the customer being able to interact directly with the producer of that product, the maker of that product, and then to make their own determinations if they want to proceed with that transaction. And so when you put that into another location and you're not there present with that product, then you don't have that opportunity. So that's the reasoning of that. It's one of the foundational principles of that exemption. And so any of those business to business where you're not maintaining control of that product to the end consumer, except for like delivery services, or through the mail, then that's why that does require that food processing license. And then to dive a little bit more into this direct to consumer exemption, if you're making that food, again, that does not require temperature control for safety or specialized processing, and you're maintaining control of that to the end consumer, except for a delivery type of scenario, you do not have to have a license. That does not include, again, business to business sales. You still have to have safe food, safe product, and then can't be a specialized process again. So we'll dive a little bit more into this. I did want to call out the QR code there goes to Londa's in K-State Extension's wonderful document on the direct-to-consumer sales, best practices and regulations. It covers a variety of products. A lot of them are whether they're exempt or not, and certain requirements that you need to follow there. But that's a great resource. The reason it's so big is because there's so many different types of products. And so as folks come up with different products or variations, we try to account for those and get them into the publication for the following year. So foods that are allowed, again, don't require specialized processing for safety. fresh uncut produce. Certain types of produce can be cut and processed for direct-to-consumer sale. The Farmer's Market Guide, again, has direct-to-consumer guide has some more information on that. It just depends on cut leafy greens, cut melons do support growth of bacteria that can make people sick. So those are not allowed under this exemption, but other things like herbs do not. And so they are allowed to be processed a little bit further for that direct consumer. Salad mixes can be in this if they're not processed beyond the harvest cut. So your baby spring mix types of products could fall under this exemption. Again, if there's questions about your particular variation on a given product, let us know and we'll walk through that with you. And again, those are only direct to the end consumer sales. So anything that you can't do that you would need a license or might even just be prohibited depending on what it is and what outlet you're going through, you would have to have a license or other approval. Would be temperature control for safety or specialized processing. So canning low acid foods, acidifying foods, so adding acidic compounds like vinegar or lemon juice with the purpose of making that food shelf stable. Those require a license. And then business to business sales, again, requires a food processing license. So lemonade is a good question. If you're going to set up a stand direct to and do buy the drink, that's going to require more than 6 days in a calendar year. Would require a food establishment license. If you're going to make it under this exemption, make that at home. It's an acidic product. It's got a lot of sugar and water activity, so it's a low risk product. You could make that and put it into bottles. We just wouldn't want to do a full heat treatment on that. So that could be subject to that allowance. Dog treats, we'll address that real quick. Dog treats are going to be, this is all human food. What I'm talking about today is human food. So anything for pet consumption, pet treats, that's going to be under our colleagues over at the feed program, and we can connect you with that. And then traditional jams and jellies, we'll talk about that. I mentioned that earlier. Traditional jams and jellies, so not low sugar or pepper jellies, depending on that formulation. Those standardized jellies do not require a license for the direct-to-consumer sale. So yeah, tea can be, if you can't bottle tea, that would require, it's got a little bit higher risk profile with the tea because it's not acidic and it has some nutrients that bacteria can grow. But it's a good segue to this one, product evaluation, and Karen Blakesley will be on with us here after I'm wrapped up and talk about this a little bit more. But one example of a way you can get your product evaluated would be the Kansas Value Added Foods Lab at K-State. And so I get the QR code there that may work for you. We'll definitely get you that link, and Karen will share it as well. But they can take a look at your product and process and help us make that determination if it falls under this direct-to-consumer exemption, if you want to take advantage of that. Again, business-to-business sales would require a food processing license, but there's a good chance you might need to have that product evaluation or even additional work and help from an entity such as that lab. So just some examples that we've come with over the years. Again, the K-State Guide's got a lot of different food products that we can dive into, but some of these that are exempt or not that we've come up with. Oops. So we got the different types of products and looking at their characteristics and made a determination, do they fit a reasonably low enough risk to fall under this direct-to-consumer exemption or not? Real quick on these, just our general approach. Everything that we're talking about for any of these requirements is safety first. So keep food safe and extra stuff out. That's a quick and easy way to think about what we're trying to accomplish here. Critical food temperatures, if you're operating under the 6-day exemption or the fundraising exemption, and you're doing things that require temperature control for safety, you're going to have to keep foods hot or cold as appropriate. You're going to have to cook them appropriately. You're going to have to follow hygiene and sanitation requirements. Londa also put together a really nice guide with K-State to help us with the sampling requirements. And so that's what's there on that QR code. So if you're sampling, as well as this particular QR code is for exempt operations, kind of streamlines these requirements and gives you some good understanding and a listing of those to work with. And it'll be, again, temperatures, cooking temperatures, hot and cold holding. Hand washing, really wanted to call this out because the leading cause of foodborne illness in the country right now is, and for many years has been what's called norovirus, very hardy virus. It'll last in the environment, transmits really well, causes really not a good illness. Fortunately, not typically going to cause serious illness unless you have other underlying factors, but we still don't want to have that, and we can prevent it. So no bare-hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. If you're sick, have certain illnesses or conditions, don't work with food, and then proper hand washing as well to support that. Senior ABCs Twice also wrote a hand washing song to Old Town Road, but you can do your own types of songs. The key point is scrubbing for 15 seconds. You want to have an adequate flow, and you want to have of water, and you want to have a good good flow of water, a good scrubbing, and a good hand cleanser there. Get some good old-fashioned soap there. And for temporary setups, you might be able to get real creative. A lot of camping and RV stuff can help with this, or you can rig up your own things, just hands-free, providing good water flow, catching that water as well, and making sure that it's disposed of properly, cleaning all food contact surfaces like knives and cutting boards and spoons, or having an adequate backup supply of those if needed. Just depends on your situation. And then water's got to be potable. It's got to be drinkable water to start with. And you want to capture that waste and put it down the sanitary sewer and not in the storm sewer or just dumped on the ground. Yeah, I appreciate Amy's comment there. Norovirus is no fun. Protecting the food, whatever you're distributing it or giving it out, want to make sure that it's safe and protected from contamination. And that just depends on the conditions. So it can be all kinds of different ways, depending on what day you are in Kansas, might mean a different type of protection that you need to provide from the environment. All right, jump over to labeling real quick. And it's another service that the Value Added Foods Lab can help with, but some of these are just basic things. What is the product? What's in the product? So that how much is there? That's kind of a weights and measures and consumer protection thing. And then what goes into the product, ingredients by weight from the heaviest to the lightest. Your name as a responsible party. Got to have that street address unless you're in a local phone directory or the web search that will pull up your address if they look for that product name. Major food allergens. I'll call out that sesame was added as the 9th major food allergen that's now required to be disclosed. And then if you're big enough, hopefully y'all get to the point where your business is successful enough to be required based on size to have nutrition information, nutrition labeling. But if not, if you're making any health content claims like good source of this nutrient or low sugar or sugar-free or healthy alternative, whatever, you would have to put in a nutrient content claim. You have to put in a nutritional labeling at that point. Jump over to the license types. Mention this a little bit, but food establishment is going to be that direct to the end consumer. If your product requires a license for that, then that is considered a food establishment. Food processor is the license type for further distribution. Wholesale or business to business types of sales is that. You can get a license in your home. There's a little bit of a historic photo, but basically we step in as the eyes and ears of the consumer when they're not able to make that assessment themselves, when there's that difference between they're buying it on the store shelf, they can't go and do that inspection, and most of them wouldn't want to anyway. And so we'll go in there and look at that. But you can get licensed at your home. It doesn't need to be a separate kitchen area from your personal use kitchen. Has to be built for purpose, has to be suitable for what the process and product that you're making. And then storage handled appropriately, and then packaged products got to be labeled appropriately. So we can do that. We can work with folks. We can do planning visits and just talk about if the space is even feasible to build that out. An alternative would be a shared use kitchen, and can use this as that direct to consumer exemption. You can go find a good shared use kitchen and utilize that. We do have a shared use kitchen resources guide and a listing of folks that have that space available, that service available. If you do have a product or you're required to have a license, you can get a license in a shared use kitchen. We can work through that process with you as well. Each individual that's required to be licensed has to have their license in that facility. We license an operator in a facility. So it's not, unless that kitchen wants to take on the liability for your product, you're going to need your own license in that facility. All right, so a lot of interest in the egg laws. I think maybe that's a little bit related to the price of eggs lately, but talk about that. If you want to read the law, it's available there on our website. But talk about the couple exemptions and then when a license is required. So a license is required when there's 250 hens in the flock, or you want to sell them graded, and or if you want to sell them to a licensed food establishment. So if you want to bring them into a grocery store, convenience store, sell them to a school, sell them to a bakery. If you have your own restaurant and you have your own flock and you want to bring them into that establishment, then you need to have an egg license. If you just want to do the small flock or very small flock direct to consumer egg sales, you can do that without any type of license and without paying the egg inspection fee. But that's again only direct to the end consumer. They're ungraded. If you have 51 to 250 hens, you do have to clean and wash the eggs, put them in a carton, put that ungraded statement on there, and your name and address. You do have to obliterate any markings on any reused cartons, so there's no confusion about those eggs coming from that other original packer. And then you do have to keep those eggs at 45 or less. If you have up to 50 hens, you don't have any requirements. They can only be ungraded direct to the end consumer. We do recommend that you follow those rules. The marketplace in the United States is really set up to have refrigerated egg sales, but you're not required to do that under that 50 hen exemption direct to the end consumer ungraded. If you do refrigerated eggs, if you're required to, or if you just want to do that as the best practice, 45 or less air temperature for that. Think about a temperature measuring device to make sure you're maintaining that temperature and capacity of recovery. You could probably keep your eggs in a cooler for parts of the year. Other parts of the year, you're going to need some ice, dry ice, or some other thing to keep that air temperature low enough without freezing your eggs. And make sure that the temperatures are monitored. Because you open up a cooler during the summer, probably going to lose that air temperature pretty quick. Now, if you do get a license, it's a $5 license fee annually. And you also have to pay the last handler of the eggs has to pay that 3.5 mils per dozen. So it's about 0.35 cents per dozen, about a third of a penny. You can either pay that by egg stamps or quarterly. Egg stamps are $18.70 a roll, and that covers about $3 per $3.50 per 1,000 dozen is the actual inspection fee, and the remaining cost is for printing and mailing those. But that's every dozen gets a stamp on there and puts your size and grade and a pack date is written in there. There's a blank stamp if you need the flexibility or if you have other non-chicken varieties of eggs that you're selling. If you do the quarterly fee, you pay it once a quarter, minimum $15. Otherwise, if it's above that number, you pay whatever that dozen of eggs that you paid that you sold that quarter. And there's a $5 per day late penalty potential there if you're late on that quarterly payment. Some people will pay just because it's easier to do $15 a quarter, but for the actual cost breakdown, bottom line is if you're doing 700 dozen or fewer a quarter, you probably want to go with egg stamps. If you're doing 900 or more, you probably want to pay quarterly fee. And then per a yearly basis, 3,000 dozen is the cutoff for stamps. And above that, you probably want to pay quarterly. But if your customer preference, again, it might just be easier. You don't have to mess with putting the stamp. You just have to track your sales and submit that fee. They do need to be graded under the egg license, but grading is not necessarily rocket science. Best resource there to start with is the egg grading manual. And so get through that manual. It gives you all the information you need to be able to make sure that what you're putting on the carton is what's in the carton. I'm gonna jump over to produce safety. These are federal laws, federal rules that are designed to keep produce safe again, because there have been those outbreaks historically in ongoing basis associated with produce that's not cooked. So we want to keep that safe. This does only cover produce that is not rare, that is consumed raw. For produce that is only rarely consumed raw, then that's not covered. So there's some cutoffs for size of the farm. If your sales are under 29,245 3-year average, so this is inflation adjusted. That's why the numbers kind of gone up from 25,000 where it started. You're not directly covered unless you're over that amount, but still need to be aware of these requirements and still want to take those steps necessary to keep your produce safe, keep your customers safe. Need to be keeping records on that, because if questioned, they would go back and make sure you can support that you're either exempt or under this qualified exemption of your total food sales of less than 584,908 on the 3-year average, and more than 50% of your sales directly in consumer or restaurant or grocery store within the state of Kansas or within, I think it's 175 miles of your farm. And again, keeping records on those. So that's who's covered. The key elements of the rule, and you can dive into this, put the produce safety rule link there. Covers agricultural water. So for irrigation, for transportation, if you're doing like flumes or something like that. Biological soil amendments like compost, how you handle those, particularly if they're from animal origin. Sprouts have a very high risk profile, so there's special requirement for those. How do you control animal exposures to the produce? Because they can cause contamination. What are your employees? Are they trained? And are they, again, following proper health and hygiene? And then your equipment, tools, and buildings. So K-State has great resources on this, produce growers trainings that are available as well. So can help you connect with those. But those are the key elements that the produce safety rule addresses. We do have a voluntary produce registry, and we ask that you self-register that if you're a producer of these produce items, lettuce, apples, all these things that are produce items that are consumed raw, typically. You can get the postcard if you want, let us know. Otherwise, you can go online and fill that out. It helps us keep track of the numbers, which helps with funding that we get to help provide educational outreach activities. A lot of people will be exempt, but we still need to include those in our inventory so we know what's out there. All right, so that's the whole load there, pretty quick, and we'll see if there's, I don't know if there's time for any questions. We'll make sure Karen has time to cover her information as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam. That was great. And Adam, you did a great job of covering a lot of questions like during your presentation. So I think because we have been getting so many great questions, I think I will turn it over to Karen and let Karen do her presentation, and then we should have time to come back for questions as well. So, but thanks again, Adam, and thanks for all the good references. Actually, I will mention one thing before Karen jumps on. And then, like I said, we should have time to come back for questions. So Adam was referring to the publications, and I know Sammy mentioned it in the the first few days. I don't remember if she mentioned it today or not. I apologize, but so we do have. So if you when you register for this event, you can indicate how many of the publications you want. So there's 3. There's the regulations publication, and then there's the sampling publication, then there's a labeling publication. So those 3 publications, you can indicate if you want, extra copies of those shipped to you. So you should have gotten them if you registered before a certain date. You should already have them, or you'll be getting them soon. We have them available. All those 3 are available in English and Spanish. So yeah, he put the QR code up so you can scan it and find it on your phone, or we can ship them to you as well. So hopefully you got signed up for that. And yeah, the recording will be on the workshop website. So Adam has kindly agreed to let us post the recording as well as his PowerPoint on the website. So it'll be up there, in a few days. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen, and then we'll go back to questions for Adam. So thanks. Thanks, Robin. So thanks very much, Adam, and thanks, Karen.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Londa, can you see the big screen? Are you seeing the big screen? Okay, good. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I bring you greetings from the Kansas Value Added Foods Lab. My name is Karen Blakesley. I'm an extension associate here for K-State Research and Extension, located in Call Hall here in Manhattan on campus. If y'all have been here and you know where the ice cream store is, that's where I'm located. So I'm actually within the animal science department. That's where most of our food science program is located. So I just want to start off with giving you the pictures of our students that work in the lab. We have 7 undergraduate students that help run the testing and any of the work that needs to be done. Nate and Liz are the student managers in the lab, and so they coordinate the daily activities and keep everybody moving along on what needs to be done. So if you call us, one of these kids are going to be answering the phone, and this program allows these students to gain a whole lot of experience on the food business from beginning to end and what's all involved. Plus, it also helps them learn about customer service, and because you really don't teach that in a classroom, and this really gives them a lot of good experience in doing this. So anyway, these are great kids. I feel like I have the cream of the crop that work in the lab. So anyway, these are the faces and names of who works in the lab here for us. All right, so we've been around for 30 some years. Some of you may have worked with us in the past. This program was started by Dr. Fadi Aramoni. He retired in 2020. And so now myself and Dr. Kelly Getty are the co-managers of the lab, the co-directors of the lab. We work with KDA. They graciously provide funding for us to run this program. And so we're very thankful for that. We also work with the From the Land of Kansas program and with Sammy and helping with that side of things. And of course, the regulatory support, it's definitely a big part of what we do. If you are a member of the From the Land of Kansas program, you can get a discount on our services. You have to specifically ask for our services in order to get that. So if you just sign up for From the Land of Kansas and think that you're going to get our discount, you probably won't. So make sure when you sign up for it that you specifically ask for our services. And we work with farmers market, those who want to sell farmers market vendors to established companies here in Kansas. And we also work with some folks outside of Kansas. In fact, we're working with somebody in Louisiana right now. So all of our work is confidential. We don't share any of your products with anybody else. And so just know that we do keep things confidential. So we work with the FDA regulations. Any of the products that are under those regulations, those are the products that we work with. If you were on Tuesday, you heard from Dr. Boyle. She handles anything that's under the USDA regulations. So that's pretty much any kind of meat product that you want to sell. So if you're doing that kind of product, she's the one to talk to on that. Otherwise, we handle the FDA type products. And Dr. Getty is our process authority. So if you have a product that requires an FDA review, we'll look at your formula and how you're making it, what kind of packaging you're using, your times, your temperatures, the whole process in great detail. We will look at that. And if we find some red flags, we'll get with you on that and work with you to try to correct those things and make sure that you're compliant. So Dr. Getty will help you with that. We also do nutrition facts labeling, which Adam mentioned a little bit earlier. And I handle that side of the program and making sure those labels are done correctly. With doing the nutrition facts label, it also generates an ingredient statement and will identify any allergens that must be listed on your label. Now, and I'll talk about nutrition labels here a little bit more. The product testing that we do, checking any of the pH amounts that are in your product, water activity, sodium content. The sodium content is primarily done for accuracy for the nutrition labels. We can check percent Brix, which is primarily the sugar content in a product, moisture content, fat, and we also do basic ground floor microbial. If you do ask us for any help with doing a shelf life evaluation, that's primarily when that comes into play. So the shelf life evaluation, any kind of sensory or even alcohol content, those are done by request. So the cost on those varies depending on what needs to be done. Alcohol content is done for things like, we've done some kombucha products. There are some regulations to follow with how much alcohol can be present and whether you fall under the exemption that where you don't have to follow the alcohol board regulations. So that gets into a whole nother area of things. We've even had a pie product that had some alcohol in it that we had to get checked to see how much was in that. So that's just something to be aware of if you're making things that has alcohol in it. So for the nutrition labels, these are some tips to remember, and all of this, start early. The earlier the better. If you're expecting to get your product out and sell it next week and you need all this done before then, I can tell you right now that's not going to happen. So please be mindful of that. And it usually takes us around 4 weeks to get through what needs to be done. Attention to detail is critical when you send us your information. We'll ask for your recipes. We'll ask for brand names of the ingredients that you're using. And we need to have all of the sub ingredients that are in those ingredients. For example, like ketchup. Not all ketchup is the same. So you can't just tell us 1 gallon of ketchup. You've got to say what brand of ketchup it is and what are all those sub ingredients, because the FDA regulations require that if you have 2 or more sub ingredients in an ingredient that you're using, those have to be listed. So get a scale. Measuring your ingredients by weight is much more accurate than using household measure. So getting a scale is really beneficial, either by weight or volume. For liquid ingredients, that works best for us. And then we can create labels in different formats. The one you see here is a vertical format. We can also do what's called tabular, which will squish that down and spread it out into 3 columns. Or even a linear format, which is just words and numbers. It's not in the graphic like you see it here. It depends on your label size as to what would fit on here. Now, many of you may fall under the exemption where you don't have to have a nutrition facts label on your products, but I'll just say that it is good information for your consumers to know about. And if you're down the road that your business starts growing and you get into a grocery store or something like that, they may require you to have that on there. So it's something that I think is a good idea, and it's good consumer information for them to know. All right. From Dr. Getty, from the Process Authority side of things, these are some things to think about. As I mentioned earlier, if you have to file with the FDA, we need to know your times and temperatures of what you're cooking your products to, how much time are you holding the product for, what temperatures they are. So get a thermometer and a timer. And if you're stating in your instructions that, oh, I bring this to a boil or reduce to a simmer, that's not going to work. We've got to know specific times and temperatures, and that will help us better understand what you're doing and make sure you're doing it safely. The types of containers and the sizes that you're using and the types of lids that you're using makes a difference. So be as specific as possible. So for example, using an 8-ounce glass jar with a 2-piece lid, that's good. So be specific about that, even if it's plastic. We need to know, like on a plastic jar, we'll need to know how hot of a temperature can that plastic withstand. So, that the head space in a jar, which is the space between the top of the jar and the top of the food, we need to know what that is, what your target is on that. If you're doing the hot fill inversion method where you invert the jars for a certain amount of time, we need to know how long you're doing that and what temperature you're reaching it to. So yes, we ask for a lot of things, but it's required, and it's to your benefit to make sure that we know that you're doing this safely, whatever product it is. Adam mentioned our publication. This is the front, what it looks like. Take a look at this, and I know it's big and there's a lot of stuff in there, but take some time and read through it. We go through this every year and update it. One of the more recent things that we've added in the last year or two is freeze-dried foods. That's something that's become popular. So we try to add new things as they come up, and specify, get more specific on things as need be. So this is updated every year, and it's also in Spanish for those that require that, and to help them understand what's all in here. I think Londa, or I know these have been mentioned already. We have a couple more of these meat marketing workshops coming up down in over in Olathe and down in Parsons. So if this is something that interests you, please, and if you can attend these, please do so. We just got done with the first one last Friday, and we had around 60 people there, and it was very well received, and it was a really good workshop for everybody. There's also in Olathe in March, there's a food business conference that you might be interested in. This is a 2-day conference. Please note that this has 2 separate registrations to it. All the information for that, I've got it posted on our Kansas Value Added Foods Lab website under the workshops. So this might be something that you could attend and learn more about how to get a food business going. So that's out there, and then this is who it's being, and it's free. So you don't have to pay anything, and it's because of all the sponsorships here that are helping out with this. Between K-State and the University of Wisconsin and University of Missouri, we partnered together to get a USDA grant to work with food entrepreneurs like you guys. And we received that grant, found out about that last year. It's a $500,000 grant. We're kind of excited about this. And so we're just getting started on what we'll be doing with this. I know one of the things that we want to do is for those that have to take a better process control school for acidified foods, we want to make this a little more user friendly. If you take this class directly from the FDA training, it's overwhelming. I'll admit it, I've taken it myself, and it's a lot of information. So we're going to build on what Wisconsin has done and try to make it a little more user friendly and easier for y'all to take and understand. And we're hoping to get some food safety training and education out there for y'all to take. So stay tuned for that. We've got some things in the works on that. And as I said, we're just getting started on this and what it's going to look like. Some resources. The North Central Food Safety Education Network. This is between K-State and 12 other states. It goes up to North Dakota, over to Ohio and back. We try to provide some universal resources for everybody to use in the food entrepreneur world. There is a lot of overlap, but then again, every state has their own regulations. I'll tell you, up in North Dakota, it's pretty much open season. They can do pretty much whatever they want up there. Their legislature passed laws that allowed these small food businesses to pretty much do whatever they wanted. So goes from that to those that have cottage food laws. I mean, ours are kind of like what you would call cottage food laws. but they're there for a reason. And like Adam said, our bottom line is to help you make safe food. So this is a newsletter that we put out. It's primarily focused on home food preservation, but if you're doing that, please sign up for it because there's a lot of good information there. So check out that QR code there and sign up for, take a look at the publications that we've done and also sign up for the newsletter. Londa and I are also part of a K-State Extension local foods program. We have a website with that, which is right here. This QR code will take you to register for what we call town halls. We've been doing some quarterly local foods town halls that are via Zoom. They're held the fourth Wednesday of each quarter. So we just did one last month. Our next one is coming up in April. So you're welcome to participate in these. It's a great way to get connected with people across the state, and not just food entrepreneurs, but other people too that are in this business of providing local foods. And K-State has received a $750,000 grant to establish a new center for a local foods initiative. We're working on getting a couple people hired to run this program right now. So this is something new that's coming out, and we're kind of excited about building on this this local foods initiative that has really become popular and really expanded a lot in the last few years. So participate if you so choose. They're free. They don't cost a thing. So another thing I'd like to make you aware of is our community vitality program with K-State Research and Extension. We have what's called First Friday e-calls that are open to anybody to participate. You can sign up for these and you'll get on their regular list notifications as to when these happen. It's usually the first Friday of every month, hence the name First Friday e-calls. If you go to this website here, off of the extension website, click on community, then on business and entrepreneurship, that will take you to the website in order to sign up for those. And it's just a great way to learn about community development, whether it's food related or not, how you can help your communities grow and be a vital part of wherever you're located. And here's our contact information. We also have a newsletter that we've been putting out, and we encourage you to sign up for this. It comes out via email, and you can also see the past newsletters on our website. This is where we're located. As I mentioned, we're here in Call Hall, and there's our phone number and our email and our website address. So please get a hold of us. We're here to help you and to help you make safe food products as much as we possibly can. All right, I think that's all I have, Londa.
Great. Thank you very much, Karen. Lots of great information. And thanks, Adam. So we know that it is 1 o'clock basically, or it's 12:59. So, and we understand if some people have to go, please feel free to leave, of course, if you need to. Adam and Karen, are you able to stay on a few more minutes? I
Yes.
asked you earlier. Okay, great. Thank you. So, so if you're able to stay, we will go through some questions because I know a bunch have come in. Adam's been doing a great job of answering them, but I'll start at the bottom, I think this time. So Adam, you did already reply to this, but the freeze-dried items, can you maybe just talk through that a little bit, Adam? I know you put something in the chat, but just to talk through it might be helpful.
Yeah, so the direct consumer exemption, again, you start with where are you selling it? So in a direct consumer exemption, in this case is what it sounded like the question was framed as. Apples would be one type of product that is not, it doesn't become temperature controlled for safety once it's cut, like lettuce or melons do. And so you could go ahead and process that. You could sell that either fresh cut or freeze dried. So you could cut it to do that. So it just depend on what product that you wanted to do. The basic approach is, if for freeze drying, if the food item doesn't require temperature control for safety before freeze drying, then we allow it under the direct to consumer exemption. It won't prevent risk or reduce risk, but it will, won't add to the risk necessarily. So yeah, just kind of product by product, we can talk through a few, but yeah, and we'll try to get some clarification on the apples there, Alice, on that one to help clarify.
Yeah, we try to we try to do the best job that we can to include everything in that publication, but we sometimes miss some things. So yes. Okay. I was going to start at the bottom, but now they keep coming. Okay, what would be the process for getting certified to sell a canned or jarred soup? Maybe Adam, you can start, and then Karen can jump in on that one.
Yeah, that's probably gonna be one of the most complex ones regulatorily, because probably the soup's gonna be a low acid canned food. And then if you did want to have one that included meat or poultry products, then that's gonna kick over to FSIS, or most likely, or it could be done under state inspection potentially. So from the regulatory side, you need that, and then Karen's crew could help with all the details on that, getting that process lined out and filed with FDA. But he would also then require either, if it was vegetable soup, for example, no meat or poultry, then that would be under our food processing license. If it was meat and poultry, then it would be done under their inspection.
Yeah, and we have a publication on our website that's specifically on selling canned foods. I was just Googling it, but I didn't quite get it done. But so if you go to K-State Extension, and there's a publication called Selling Canned Foods, and it really goes through that whole process specifically on canned foods. So okay, and yeah, Karen, thank you. She put in the chat, if you want to deliver your product to the lab, you're more than welcome to do that. Okay, so the question, is there a list of acidic foods from K-State or the USDA? So that publication 31, MF 3138, that big 16-page one that we've been talking about, that one, so that one lists out, every type of, many types of food products. And we kind of tried to say, what requires licensing and what doesn't. And that canned foods publication, the Selling Canned Foods in Kansas publication, that one too, gives a number of different examples. So, so we've tried to list as many examples as we can. Let me see. Okay, the next question is, so if I make a bourbon applesauce or a bourbon cherry jam, does the value added lab get involved?
Yes. Yes, it would. And we may have to check your alcohol content too. And this is where it gets kind of, and Adam, you can help me with this, but according to the Department of Revenue, if your product has 0.5% or more alcohol content, you have to comply with the alcohol board's regulations. Is that right?
Yeah, our current understanding, we always cross-check with these particular products just to make sure, but there's that if it's in that kind of delivery system is more of that food product versus a beverage, subset of food is a beverage. If it's a beverage, then it's going to be alcohol regulations. If it's a food, then it's not. So we would want to double check on that, but that alcohol could definitely change that chemistry. We want to make sure that it still falls into that proper category of safe.
And it depends on what else is in your formula too, not just the alcohol. It also depends on what else you're using in your formula.
Yeah, and like those two publications that I mentioned, that Selling Canned Foods one, and then the MF 3138, the regulations list, that one hopefully will help provide a little more clarity too. Okay, so jelly testing requirements, what is the cutoff for something to be considered low acid? So Adam put that in the chat. Do you want to say any more on that, Adam?
Yeah, I think like mango is one that comes to mind as a low acid fruit, but there's definitely some resources there. I think K-State has a listing of common pH foods. If you do a Google search, you can find some reputable sources as well. But
yeah, melons are another one that are considered low acid, like watermelon, cantaloupe. So that would be considered a low acid fruit. A lot of people don't think of those as low acid, but they actually are. So.
Good. Next question is, please explain when a honey producer needs a license. and what honey products such as flavored honey, spun, creamed honey, honey fruits and nuts need licensing?
Yeah, so start with where you want to sell it again. So if you want to sell it to another processor and you just want to sell that bulk honey in barrels or buckets, and just do that extraction, or even just sell them the comb, whatever, that could be done without a license. But if you want to package in a final retail consumer packaging of any of those honey or honey products, that would require a license for that wholesale transaction. If you want to do direct to consumer, it's the same principle as the other direct to consumer foods. Most of those don't require temperature control for safety. The ones that were listed there, I think all of those would fall under that exemption for direct to consumer. Now, if you want to do honey barbecue sauce, and we're talking about a different regulatory path, but for your spun, those other types of honey products, those would be allowed under the direct to consumer exemption.
Yeah, and we've gotten some honey products that are infused with chilies, like chili peppers.
Mm.
You know, we may have to do some testing on those. It just depends on how many chilies you're putting in there or what it is. That could affect the acidity. It could even affect the water activity of it too. So
It's a good
that
point.
type of thing, yeah, that might be something to it, but we'll likely have to test for you.
Next question that hasn't been answered yet, and yeah, again, thanks, Adam, for addressing some of the questions in the chat earlier. I make garlic powder. What is it considered? Do I need to be licensed, and do I need a commercial kitchen?
Yes, we talked about adding the food products to the guide, and I think this will be one I can throw on the list there. Just doing a quick research, my sense is that it will be allowed under that direct-to-consumer exemption. If you wanted to go that route, if you want to do wholesale, then that would require a license for sure. It looked like the process is going to be pretty straightforward. We just want to double check that before we do a final answer on that. So we'll follow up with you once we get that confidently answered.
Great, thank you. What is the difference in regulations between lemonade made with lemons as opposed to powdered drink mix?
Not really seeing any difference there. It's just going to depend mostly on the product output. I would anticipate both of those products. There's going to be probably more consistency with the commercial mix, but it just depends on your outlet and how you want to market that as to what regulatory requirements would be there. From the product standpoint, once it's finished, there could be some variation between a powdered mix. Probably just depends on sugar and acidity. So it's going to be product and outlet specific as far as what the regulatory requirements would be.
Great, thank you. And the next question is kind of similar. I assume hot tea or cold tea is the same as lemonade. I think when you use the term lemonade, it's just like a drink is what you were saying. I mean, I think, right, Adam, it's not like the regulations are not specific to lemonade. It's just lemonade is one example of a drink, I think.
Right, thanks. And yeah, tea does have different, a little bit higher risk profile. Again, you have to clean those tea receptacles every 24 hours because they will support growth. If you're canning that product or bottling that product, that's going to be a little bit different answer than making it fresh to order. So there's some nuances there.
All right. Okay, I'll go to the last two questions here and then we'll wrap up. So if I can or jar foods from my vegetable garden for my personal consumption, may I bring a couple jars to the foods lab for testing to make sure I'm canning properly to avoid foodborne illness?
Well, to start with, we highly recommend that you follow good tested researched recipes. There's a lot of them out there, and in fact, I'll put my website in there in the chat so that you can get to those resources. Sorry, it's hard for me to do two things at the same time. So I teach a lot of home food preservation classes. So it's something that we strongly encourage that you follow these tested recipes. If you follow those, you really should never have any problems with any of your products. Now, if you're coming up with a whole new recipe of something, that is something that we can work with you on, and then you can bring your product in and we can check it. But start out with these good tested recipes and you really shouldn't have any problem. There's a lot of good ones out there. And so I highly encourage that you start with that.
Thanks, Karen. Next question for Adam. Other than who you are selling to, is there any difference between a food processing license and a food establishment license?
That's a good question. There's some different wrinkles between the regulations that apply. There's some different regulatory requirements and some different ways. The end goal is the same, a safe product. So a lot of the facilities, depending on the product, a lot of the facilities tend to be similar. So it just depends on, are you making donuts to sell the convenience store down the road? Or are you making dry spice mix? Or are you making something more extensive? So a lot of it really just, the license type is different. The regulations are different as well. But either way, we can help work through those questions with the operator.
Great. Okay, next question. If I have a meat wholesale license, do I also need a food processing license to sell at a store?
So presuming that you're selling that product in original, inspected, and passed packaging, that covers that wholesale transaction of that product. If you're doing some other activities, there might be a little bit different answer. It just depends. Everybody's got a little bit different wrinkle on their operation. But generally that meat wholesale license, that covers if you're just selling those products, that covers that direct to the end consumer as well as that wholesale part of it. There's some retail stores that are doing what's the hotel restaurant institution or HRI exempt products that pass through, fall in those allowances. So there's some little different nuances depending on what you're particularly doing, but generally that meat wholesale license will cover you selling that package inspected product from your processing plant to the wholesale account or to the end consumer. Any further question, we can coordinate with the meat and poultry team and help get those answered exactly for your operation.
Great. Yeah, it depends is often an answer. Unfortunately, there's a lot of nuances, I guess, to the questions, unfortunately. So, okay, I think this is the last question. And I know I can answer this, but I know both Adam and Karen can too. So if we use a good tested recipe, do we still have to bring it in to be tested? So, the website that Karen put in is for home food preservation. So those are recipes that are tested for home use, so not for being sold. It's still
That's right.
good idea to use them. We would still encourage it. But if you want to sell, and again, this goes to that publication that we have, the Selling Canned Foods in Kansas publication and the MF 3138, that goes through more detail of what products really need to be tested. But if it needs to be tested, it still needs to be tested, even if you're using a tested recipe.
Yeah.
But again, Karen and Adam can jump into.
Well, when you go into the world of selling food products, then that has to be done, unfortunately. So, but if you're just doing it for your home use, start with those good recipes and you'll do just fine.
Great. Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for hanging in there. I know it's after 1 o'clock, so appreciate everybody's time and appreciate all the great questions. Thanks to Adam and Karen for presenting. I'm going to turn it over to Sammy. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Londa. Our drawing winner is Suzanne Smithberg. I'm not sure if that's your profile name or your real name, but anyway, we'll get that sent to you, and then also some popcorn to pop as well. Like we said before, at the conclusion of the webinar series, which will be on Friday, we'll email you an evaluation survey just to make sure that we can make these better for you. If you have any comments, please let us know, and to assist our team with future planning sessions as well. Tomorrow we'll have the Kansas Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program speaking on that topic. And then if you have any questions in the meantime, please call us at 785-564-6755. Thank you for joining us today and have a good afternoon.